Welcome, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Shweta Maniar, leader for biopharma solutions at Google Cloud. We work with life sciences organizations to understand their largest problems and how we can bring Google Cloud and our ecosystem solutions to the table. We firmly believe in the power of data to advance life sciences, and by organizing and managing data at scale, the solutions that we're developing are transforming across the value chain within biopharma. And today it's my pleasure to be hosting this forum where we're going to be hearing from Ben, the Chief Technology Officer of Recursion, on Recursion Pharma's journey adopting AI and ML to drive positive transformations to impact patients' lives and the biopharmaceutical industry. And he's going to share a little bit about the challenges, the traditional challenges that we have with drug discovery, and how Recursion is overcoming them with technology and best practices with machine learning models and AI. In the second half of our time together today, we're going to have a key partner of Google Cloud and of Recursions, DoiT International, join us. We will hear from Vinay Gandhi, who is the Senior Cloud Architect at DoiT International, who's going to provide an overview of the various tools on the Google Cloud platform that's going to help other organizations to get started in their journey of adopting AI and ML pipelines to drive faster time to discovery. So let's get started. I'd like to introduce Ben, who served as Recursion's Chief Technology Officer since 2020, and was the VP of Engineering, among other roles at Recursion since 2017. Ben has a versatile background in computer science, machine learning, software engineering, and data science with over 15 years of industry experience, having worked as a machine learning engineer, building automated machine learning systems and solutions in the ad tech, customer service, and the healthcare industry. Prior to joining Recursion, Ben was a senior data scientist and a team lead at Savvy Sherpa. Now it is part of United Health's group's R&D function, following the acquisition of Red Brain Labs, a data science consultancy to Fortune 500 companies, which Ben co-founded and served as Chief Technology Officer there. A little bit about Recursion before we get Ben on to share a bit more. Recursion is a clinical stage biotech company decoding biology by integrating technological innovations across biology, chemistry, automation, machine learning, and engineering. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about Recursion, Recursion's map, the Recursion map, and how you're leveraging Google Cloud and our partnership here. So Ben, would you please introduce yourself a little?
Yeah, I think you did a good job of my background. I would say, the one thing that you didn't say is that I had that background in ad tech, and I went to Recursion because I wanted to make a difference. And so I'm here at Recursion because I really want to make an impact on the world. And so that kind of what drives me day to day is the ability to make an impact on patients.
That's great, Ben. And thank you. So before we get right into the meat of the discussion, I always like to try to start with an icebreaker. So before we get into Recursion, can you please share, given where we are in the world and the time in the world, what's the first place that you'd like to go on vacation once the world is fully open and you're comfortable with travel?
Yeah, so my wife and I, we've had on our bucket list, we've wanted to visit Machu Picchu, Peru. And in fact, we had a trip planned in September of 2020 for over a year and a half to go there. That obviously did not happen. So once the world is fully open, we would love to actually make that a reality and head down there.
That's great. While I've done Machu Picchu myself, I'm looking for more of a tropical vacation after all of this, Ben. So good on you. So all right, so let's kick this off. So for the people in the audience who may not be familiar with Recursion, can you please introduce us a bit more into Recursion, its mission, what's its core business like?
Yeah, like you said, Recursion is a clinical stage biotech company, and we have four clinics we have 4 assets in the clinic right now, and we also have a large partnership we entered with Bayer in 2020 into the area of fibrosis. And so we are a platform technology. It's not just about 1 or 2 assets. We're building a platform, what we call the Recursion operating system, that really integrates all of these different fields of biology, chemistry, automation, data science, so that we can industrialize drug discovery. And I can explain more what that means.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's talk a little bit let's get into that process. So what is, in order for us to understand what Recursion's model is, let's first talk about what is the traditional drug discovery process, a little bit about its timelines. What are some of the challenges that are associated with the traditional drug discovery process?
Yeah, the traditional drug discovery process typically begins with target identification. So finding a particular gene or a protein in the human body or a pathogen that you want to target and modify the behavior of. Now, once you've identified a target, you then develop a specific assay for that target. For those of you who aren't familiar with the term assay, you can think of it as a set of procedures to carry out, like an experiment in the lab, and a set of readouts that will inform you if the compound is, being active or is toxic in that assay. Now, these readouts, they're often univariate, meaning, for example, they could just be the count of the cells at the end of the experiment. Now, once a specific assay has been developed, you can then proceed to screen a large amount of compounds in a high throughput way in order to identify compounds that affect the behavior of the target identified. Now, the challenges is not only developing the specific bespoke assay very time consuming and it blocks your screening efforts, but it can also limit on how well you can translate into actual human trials, because it may be that the fact that the target you identified actually is not relevant in the course of that human disease. And this is something that often you don't find out until human clinical trials, which is one of the many reasons why the failure rate for drugs in the clinic is 90%. Every drug developed will fail 90% of the time in the clinic. Now, what it describes so far is just the early parts of drug discovery. Once you have screened all of those compounds and identified hits, you then proceed to optimize these leads. This is where the chemists really take center stage, because they optimize a compound to make sure that it gets to where it needs to in the body, that it does its thing, it's effective, but also it doesn't have adverse side effects. Then once a compound reaches preclinical stage, animal testing is typically involved, and you're basically trying to see if what you found in cellular models will then transfer to the animal models. And then once the data there looks good, you then go to clinical development, which is in and of itself like a very long and complex process. And so all in all, the timelines of a drug from discovery to market is, at least 10 years typically. And, the bulk of that 6 to 7 years being taken up in clinical development work.
So this is what you've just shared, and you actually explained it a lot further through the process than I expected. What you've shared is how most of the pharmaceutical organizations are functioning. So can you share, now that we've set a baseline, how is Recursion approaching drug discovery differently?
Yeah, so as I said, we're really trying to industrialize all aspects. And to give you an example, how we've done that on the front part of early drug discovery is that we've replaced that bespoke target identification and specific assay development with a single high-dimensional, high-throughput assay. So instead of having an assay that's reading out one variable, we have an assay which is image-based in our case, that reads out lots of different information. And so when I say image-based, effectively what that means is we take lots and lots of pictures of human cells. As we take those pictures, we upload them to Google Cloud, and they're processed. But what this means is that instead of having to create a particular assay that looks at an organelle that we think affects a target, this one single assay is general purpose enough to detect all those signals, such that we can screen a large amount of disease models in a very rapid way. Now, because we've done this for years now, we've ran these screens in the same assay with the same data output. We've been able to train deep learning models on this data, and such now that we've gone to the point now where we can now do screens in silico. We can have inference predict the effects of a drug in a compound, and this really opens up a lot of scale, right? Because Doing all of the combinations of a particular disease model and a compound, even in our high throughput laboratories, is physically not feasible. It just takes too long. And so this inference-based screening, happens on preemptible GPUs, which are a whole lot cheaper than buying reagents and running them in the lab. And so, again, thanks to the advances in cloud, in automation, and deep learning, we're really able to accelerate the front part of drug discovery much faster than the traditional approach.
That's great, Ben. And so what I'm taking away also is with this high throughput screening that Recursion is able to do, now you have a more effective way of doing screening these multiple compounds. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, and that we can, and rather than having to screen every combination, we can instead just screen, we can essentially screen the marginals and then infer what those relationships would be.
That's right. Okay, so now here's going to be my kicker question for you. This sounds fantastic. So it's not even just cheaper, but you're also, the speed and accuracy is significantly increased potentially. So why aren't a lot of the larger pharmaceutical organizations already doing this? They should be able to replicate something like this.
Yeah, so that's it's a very fair question, right? I mean, big pharma, they are very well capitalized. They have extremely intelligent, talented people that they see the inefficiencies of the current approach, and they're eager to innovate in the space. At the same time, these are large, slow-moving organizations with a lot of scar tissue built up around processes and mindsets that are really hard to change. So while certain pockets of an organization may get it, and they may want to take that bet, it's really hard to get complete buy-in. And they also just have a different risk profile compared to a small company like Recursion. And so the natural tendency is just to wait and see if this ML AI thing has legs. The reality is, by the time they see it has legs, I think Recursion and other companies like us will be pretty far ahead. The other thing I would say is related to not being able to get complete organizational buy-in is that a big component of Recursion's secret sauce, if you will, is our ability to work cross-functionally. Larger companies with established ways of working really have a hard time shifting and getting biologists, chemists, data scientists really working together. And so we find even at our scale, it's hard to maintain that. And so coming into a larger organization that is set in its ways, I think would be really hard and challenging.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think you've alluded a bit to this already, but Ben, can you share a little bit about some improvements that technology has been able to drive in this drug discovery timeline at Recursion? So if we could maybe expand on that a bit more.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, the screening in and of itself, that's something that would on the order take millions of dollars at other companies, and it's a fraction at Recursion. But then timeline as well, the screen to a hit ID would, you're looking at, 15 months average industry, where Recursion, we're down into, single digit months. So that's an example of where we've done it. So,
and now I'll be a bit more pointed, right? Because we can talk about COVID-19 as well. So we're coming out of a global pandemic, one that's cost thousands of lives and lots of and billions of dollars. And we're fortunate enough to have a vaccine candidate within 12 months. Unheard of. So in your opinion, how significant is the COVID-19 vaccine discovery timeline? And how much of that was or was not driven by technology and analytics at scale?
Yeah, I mean, the development timeline of the COVID-19 vaccines is really unprecedented, right? It's outstanding. It really has showed the world what accelerated development can look like. And it really, it put a major spotlight on the mRNA technology. Having said that, to my knowledge, AI and machine learning did not play a critical role in their development. I think, certain companies have integrated in their stacks at certain places, but really the star of the show was the mRNA technology, which was a result of years of research, into the coronavirus and years of R&D into mRNA-based therapeutics. What I find interesting about this, though, is that you can go back a few years and see lots of articles disparaging mRNA therapeutics. Mm-hmm. They say it's not ever going to work, it's never going to be efficacious, and the FDA is never going to approve this. It's too new, it's too different. And so I think it's interesting because I think in the same way, you see articles like that around ML and AI being applied in drug discovery, not really moving the dial. But I think in a few years, we're going to be able to look back and we'll look at that the same way we look at these mRNA articles now, in that the criticism, some might be valid, but in large will be viewed as short-sighted.
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
That's really fair. No, I was just going to say that's really fair about, your comparison about a couple of years ago and the skepticism, right? I think it's fantastic. But I'm sorry, you had something else to add here, Ben.
Yeah, I would just say like that was like strictly speaking about the vaccines, but outside of the vaccines, I think the work that we did at Recursion around COVID-19 does in fact highlight the potential of ML and AI. Early on in the pandemic, we decided to run 2 COVID-19 related screens with the goal of finding small molecules that could be easily repurposed to treat the onset of COVID. And we did this in a hope to find drugs that were already available in the market that had lots of safety data. And what we were able to do in less than 4 weeks, we screened active virus in a biosafety level 3 facility, and we also modeled late stage COVID by screening using a patient-informed cocktail of cytokines, because basically late stage COVID is like the autoimmune over response to COVID. Anyway, so we didn't have to invent new assays to run these screens. We used our regular assay, which I just described. We used our regular image-based morphology as a readout, and we used our historical training data to train models for the results. And so this level of reuse across assays and infrastructure, using the same Google Cloud instances to do predictions, it just highlights the how you can like speed up the process when you do things like this. And just people are probably wondering, well, what was the result? Well, so in those 4 weeks, we were able to predict using our deep learning models what drugs would and would not work. And to date, subsequent randomized clinical trials that have been ran on these drugs, 6 of the 7 that have been ran actually validated what we predicted. So in particular, you might have remembered early on in the pandemic, hydrochloroquine, everyone was really jazzed about that. We predicted it would not work well, and it turns out that in the trials it did not. And similarly, we have other drugs where we predicted it would work, and they did. And so these sorts of predictions can really help prioritize experiments and trials, and it is indicative of how we speed things up at Recursion.
So that's great, Ben. And I'm sure now you've got a lot of folks in the audience today who are chomping at the bit to understand how, what are some of the things that you can share with your vast experience at Recursion and even prior. What are some of the learnings from your own journey on adopting these AI and ML workflows? Like, are there any best practices that those in the audience can benefit from hearing from you?
Yeah, a general best practice that isn't unique to drug discovery, but is absolutely critical in this, and I think most every domain, is the need to maintain a proper data lineage. So adopting tools that allow you to capture the provenance is vital. Since leaving it out and trying to layer it on after the fact is always challenging. Broadly speaking, adopting a lot of the practices coming out of the MLOps community and related tools, that's just like good practice that you should do. More specific to the drug discovery space, I really would stress the need for quality control and around data generation, and lots of care and attention put into designing experiments. I think back to the original like big data day like craze, where a lot of it was like you can use your data exhaust, your massive log files to make cool insights, right? And that may work in some domains. But when it comes to drug discovery, you really just can't pick up data that's lying around. You need to have experiments with proper controls that are consistent across time. And so that's why we invested a lot in custom experiment design tools, which run on Google Cloud, which our scientists use to ensure that when we run an experiment, we can relate it to experiments that we have ran in years past. And so while data generation, it may not be viewed as like as interesting or as challenging as some of the modeling aspects, it's like absolutely critical, and that you kind of put it as a first-class citizen within your AI ML workflows.
I'm going to probe on this just a little bit further, Ben. So I know that when we had spoken before, right, you had also talked about the investments that are required for organizations to make on systems around the curation of data. Can you share a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, this probably depends on the domain you're in, but like for example, you want to make sure that you're purposely generating the right data for a machine learning model. So that's like step one. But then outside of that, having the data quality generation in an automated set, but also having humans in the loop. And then finally, having tools that they can annotate. Like, so for example, you want to annotate certain parts of an organelle, having that kind of tool set available is really helpful when you want to generate custom data sets.
Right. Thanks for that, Ben. We're talking about how we provide best practices to others. From your experiences at Recursion, what Google Cloud technology specifically made the biggest difference? I know that you really highlighted about reducing timelines, but can you share some of the specific Google Cloud tech that you felt was most beneficial here?
Yeah, we have a lot of scale at Recursion, and it's very bursty. You know, we generate a lot of our data gets read out like over the course of 2 days for the whole week, and because of that, we really need the ability to burst fast and rapidly. Similarly, when we're doing virtual screens that take up up to thousands of preemptible GPUs, we need that to be elastic. And so we found the Google Kubernetes engine a really valuable tool. It just works. Like it's just so satisfying to see the number of GPUs and cores and memory go up, and not really having to worry about that scheduling. Like we just add it onto the job queue and it works. So I would say that's by far our favorite. We also take advantage of Google Cloud Storage, BigQuery. But yeah, it's hard to get over like how satisfying scaling on the cloud is at times.
Well, that's fantastic to hear, and better coming from you than from us. So I appreciate you sharing that. And now I want to talk about what can we do next, right? So let's talk about the data that Recursion has. What non-genomic data then would you like to be able to join with the genomic data that you have? And let's talk a little bit about the formats and where it is, and let's get a little bit more granular there.
Okay. Yeah, as I mentioned, the majority of our data set, of our proprietary 8 petabytes and growing data set is image based. We do have genomics data, transcriptomics data, which comes in this lovely file format called FASTQ, which is like a text file designed by scientists, which is always interesting. We also have like proteomics data, and we also have a data set that we call endovomics, and I can explain that. But all these different data sets we use to typically validate what we're seeing from our phenomic data set, because that's where we have the most scale. These other data sets, they're more expensive, and so we don't generate as much in scale. And so that's how we have been using it. But moving forward, we and I think the broader community, we're really interested in how to combine these various data modalities in a more holistic way, such that like our predictions or our inference-based screening can really take into account all of these different modalities all at one given point in an end-to-end fashion. And just going back to the endovomics I mentioned, so endovomics is Recursion's attempt or our approach to digitizing in vivo animal studies. So we're industrializing the preclinical stage as well. And what we've done is we've instrumented animal cages with sensors and video feeds such that we can use digital biomarkers to identify toxicity and disease phenotypes earlier in an animal study. And so we do that earlier and more efficiently. And so similar to our image-based operations, all of this data is streamed to the cloud as soon as it's generated so that we can analyze it there.
That's amazing. Those applications carry so much potential impact to how we think about the future of drug discovery. So that's fantastic. Now, this is something in my role at Google Cloud, I get asked, right? Can everything be automated? Can everything be, all automated with machine learning? So a question that I'd like to ask you, somewhat of a loaded question, right? Or what are the stages of the drug discovery process in your experience that's challenging to automate with machine learning and actually needs human intervention? And maybe share a bit about what parts you think that maybe are ripe for human, for machine learning, and probably less so on the human intervention side.
Yeah, I think while I think clinical development can benefit from technology and machine learning, I think that's an area that will always require human intervention, and rightfully so. Like, for example, you can use AI to help identify patients for a trial, but the legwork of actually enrolling them into the trial requires human touch. So I would say, like, not only is it challenging to automate it there, but it's an area that I think we want to keep the human touch there for the patient. So that's that's where I think we won't be. And then, like, in terms of like where things are ripe, I think the AlphaFold example is a pretty good example of where, like, anything where you're optimizing in a way that's very mechanical and you could fit an algorithm, like, that's a very applicable approach.
That's fantastic. And I agree. I think that there are areas that still do need a lot more human intervention. We're seeing this a lot right now in the trial design space. So I think that's a really nice delineation. Anytime that you need to interact with a human, probably from a clinical trial side, is less easier to automate because there's a lot more nuances associated with that. So Ben, I know that we're going to have the second half of our time here today. We're going to be talking with DoiT International. So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, how has partnering with Google Cloud and DoiT enabled your business? How's that enabled the work that you're doing at Recursion?
Yeah, so DoiT has a fantastic help desk support, and that sounds like like basic, but it's actually pretty life-changing, because you can not only ask them at their help desk, like around quotas and such like that, but you can actually ask them questions around new tools that are coming out, like in the open source and on the cloud products. And this is important for us because our software engineers, they have to deal with a very complex domain model. And so their time is better spent understanding that and writing code specific to that. And so being able to rely on DoiT for expertise in general cloud infrastructure is really helpful. It saved us weeks of time. When a new MLOps tool comes out, for example, we can just ask them, hey, we've seen this, we'd like to hear your take on it. And DoiT has been investigating it for weeks, maybe even months, and they can just give us a quick presentation with high touch, one-on-one back and forth. And so that type of partnership is really valuable and saves us a lot of time.
Absolutely. I know that we're coming up to the end of our time here, so we've got a few more minutes, Ben. I wanted to give an opportunity for you to share something that you're really excited about, or an initiative or something that's happening at Recursion that you'd like to share with everyone.
Yeah, I've been pretty involved with our expansion recently into Canada. So we opened up an office in Montreal in the Mila Institute, and we also are opening up an office in Toronto, Canada. So I'm excited about that. Canada has a lot of diverse talent, particularly around AI machine learning. So I'm really excited to be expanding there.
That's fantastic. Well, congratulations on that expansion. That is great news to hear. Perhaps I can leave our time with asking you, if you can, if you had a crystal ball and you can see into the future, what challenge do you see in drug discovery that AI and ML is going to solve for in the next 5 or 10 years that we can't even think about right now?
Boy, like I don't know, like I think there's gonna be lots of small areas that ML and AI like really make a change on, but like coming, and so here's my answer though, like coming from a company that is industrializing drug discovery, this is going to sound a bit glib, but like my prediction is that drug discovery, 10 years from now will be fully industrialized all the way up into clinical development. So like I imagine a future where like a drug discovery program can automatically be initiated with insights inferred from biological data, not just like papers, but from biological data. It can be iterated on with an autonomous experiment platform, largely closed loop, but with humans in the loop at key insight points. And like all of this producing a nice data package to hand off to clinical development. Like that sounds far-fetched, but I think we can get there. And Yeah, Alan Kay, he's a famous computer scientist. He said once said, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And really, like, so that this is my prediction of the future because that's what we're inventing here at Recursion. A future where bespoke drug discovery is replaced with efficient, low-cost, industrialized drug discovery.
That's amazing. I couldn't have thought of a better way to close that. So I want to thank, on behalf of our team and everybody in the audience, I do want to thank Ben for sharing your experiences and your wisdom with everyone today. And I'm sure we'll have a chance to recap at the end, but thank you for joining. And I would like to actually move on and continue to stay on time here. Our story wouldn't be complete without providing an introduction to Vinay Gandhi from DoiT International. Vinay is, as I had mentioned earlier, he is the senior cloud architect from DoiT International, and he's going to provide an overview of the various tools that are available on the Google Cloud platform to help those in the audience get started adopting the AI and ML pipelines to drive that faster time to discovery. So let me share a little bit about Vinay before he comes here on stage. Vinay has a very diverse background in software development, in machine learning, and in data science. And so he's completed his engineering from BITS Pilani in India and is extremely passionate about new drug discoveries for humans, especially pertaining to the brain. His belief is that functions of the human brain are some of the least understood, and he hopes to utilize cloud offerings using an AI and ML platform to help research and stimulate complex brain structure with extreme ease. And since March 2020, Vinay has been instrumental in assisting Google Cloud customers and partners at DoiT International. So with that, I would like to give Vinay a chance to introduce himself and DoiT International. Thank you.
Thank you, Shweta, for the introduction. And big thank you to our audience for taking the time to learn about Google Cloud and AI and ML platform. Before we start discussing about the drug discovery and AI platform, let me provide quick introduction to DoiT International. Next slide, Ian, please. The DoiT International, we are actually the largest service provider worldwide with a team of about 150 highly experienced and certified engineers in GCP and AWS distributed globally. We have about 1,000 plus customer base. Ian, next. And 100 million in funding, and we are growing almost more than 100% rate year over year. Next. Our services include initial architectural review to supporting customers 24/7 across the globe with zero additional cost. As Ben mentioned, I mean, we are able to provide training and support and POCs and various different kinds and pretty much in every domain on the cloud. And so if there are more questions, please feel free to search for DoiT International and so reach out to us. Next, please. So today we are actually assembled here to learn about GCP AI and ML platform and its application specifically in drug discovery. In drug discovery process, usually there are 4 stages, and what we usually call them is like target identification and validation, compound screening and lead discovery, preclinical development, and clinical development. At every stage, we usually require a lot of data collection and data analysis. The analysis on the data collected is generally based on the rules defined by the analyst. But what happens is as more and more data is being collected and it gets harder to identify new patterns and relationships in the data, which may be very relevant for the discovery process. So machine learning actually brings in a very specific skill into this data set. And what it can do is it can help us identify patterns and relationships in the data collected. And based on those data and relationships we can discover using machine learning, we can very quickly predict the results for the data which we have not seen before. And those type of results may not be feasible by our data analysts. So, but the problem what we have today is that machine learning is too complex for everyone to understand. And we are getting there slowly. We are having a set of people who are trying to learn and apply it. But this is where Google has actually stepped in and sort of decided that, oh, it's just too complex for everyone to understand. And why don't we make it simple enough so that people can start using it as soon as possible? And in this space, what Google has called a terminology called AutoML, and which is what I will be discussing about this in this presentation today. But next, please. As long as we have the data collected, usually in Google Cloud, what we're going to be doing is we can bring that data set into Google Cloud Storage. And once we have that data set in Google Cloud Storage, I mean, Google Cloud Storage is like infinitely scalable storage. And so in drug discovery or in any analysis platform, I mean, we need lots and lots of data. And because of this infinite scale storage, we don't have to worry about how much storage we need. We just need to bring in the data as much as we can. And once the data is in the Google Cloud Storage, then what we can do is we can apply various different type of transformations using, for example, Cloud Data Flow, which already has lots of templates. And using those templates, like a single button click, I can move that data to BigQuery. Once I have data in BigQuery, or I can actually just start using machine learning on the data set, which is on the cloud storage. So based on these tools, I mean, I'm very quickly equipped with tools where I can actually start using the data sets available and start processing them either in BigQuery for analysis or for machine learning, in machine learning for predictions. So next, please. In addition to having the data in the cloud storage and doing the processing and predicting the results, in drug discovery process, what we want to do is we want to anonymize the data so that in the data sets which are available to us, for some reason it gets leaked out or anything happens, the privacy is very important. And for those reasons, Google has also developed tool sets which are like data loss prevention APIs, healthcare APIs, genomics API, which I can use to anonymize the data so that those data sets cannot identify the individuals from which the data has been collected. So all of these tool sets help me quickly develop analysis on the data and possibly help in the drug discovery process. Now, next, please. But as we all understand that the more and more data we collect, it requires more computational power to process. And CPUs are limited to a certain extent. And the advancement of machine learning has been in last few years is mainly due to these accelerators, which has been created by NVIDIA and Google. So the GPUs actually can do very fast computing on numerical data, and machine learning is mostly tied with numerical data sets. So these advancements have made possible to discover data analysis or to discover patterns in the data at a very high speed. For example, the processes which used to take days and days now takes hours or minutes. So, and all of these type of accelerators are currently available for machine learning in Google Cloud. And in addition to that, I would like to mention is that in Google Cloud, as Ben also mentioned before, is that we can use preemptible instances or committed use discounts, and which can help us reduce the cost also at the same time. Because preemptible instances, committed use discounts can bring the cost down by 50% to 70%. Next, please. Now, so far we just talked about briefly how the processing happens on machine learning and what tool sets are available to some extent, but we haven't really gotten deep into the machine learning, techniques. So within machine learning, usually there are two types of algorithms we have. One is called supervised learning, and the other one is called unsupervised learning. In case of supervised learning, what we do is we have set of data sets available to us, which has been collected either through survey or have been collected scans from various different patients. And all of these data sets, then what we do is we define them, we call them labels, and we map them into specific properties using these input data sets. So what we have is like input data set and set of results we are expecting based on those input data sets. And so that's one of the type of data sets we collect. And then what we expect machines to learn based on this input data set and the expected outcome. And then once we have that relationship built as a model, which what we call training the model. And so once we have that model trained, then a new data set comes in with the similar input data sets. The machine is able to predict what the possible outcome could be. This is generally called supervised learning. And then there is another set of algorithms we have, which is usually called unsupervised learning, where I have the input data sets, but I do not know what the outcome is going to be for these data sets. So in that case, what machines can do is they can very easily cluster or group these data sets together and identify which data sets are very similar. And so those two type of algorithms are usually applied in machine learning. And there are various different sets of algorithms like linear regression or deep neural networks, SVM, and they all fall into supervised learning category. And then there is an unsupervised learning techniques, which are like k-means clustering or hidden Markov models and so on. So all of these models generally can be used on Vertex AI, which is a unified AI platform on Google Cloud. And let's see how this actually works out on Google Cloud and how simple it is to actually use this on Google Cloud. But Google Cloud Vertex AI AutoML platform is what we're going to be discussing today, which has most of these supervised learning methodologies automatically built into it. And so let's go to the next slide and see how that works out. So in the Vertex AI, this is one of the screenshots from the Vertex AI platform. And as we can see here is that I would like to, let's say, classify some of the lung scans. And to classify that, all I have to do is pick one of the options where, let's say, I'm trying to do a single label classification. Here, the data set is 100,000 patients scan I have, and then the data set actually has a label of whether the lungs are infected or not infected. So what I need to do is upload my data set onto Google Cloud Storage, pick the image classification single label field, point it to the Google Cloud Storage bucket where my data set is, and Google Cloud Vertex AI platform automatically going to go and do the training, figure out the best model, and then do the classification. And once it has built the model, then anytime I upload a new image of a scan, it can tell me whether that scan is infected or not infected. So it's as simple as that. I don't need to learn about various different machine learning tools, various machine learning algorithms, and so on. So here, Google, what it's trying to do is it's trying to simplify this machine learning processes. Next slide, please. Similarly, I may have, the patients coming in, same 100,000 patients, when they come in, and I have them fill out a form which talks about, let's say, whether they smoke, whether they drink, whether they exercise, and so on. So I can collect various different type of data sets, and that data set has been basically put into, let's say, BigQuery. BigQuery is a tabular data format where I can actually use that data set and then provide an outcome whether a specific person has a specific sickness. For example, they may have allergies, they may have asthma, they may have pneumonia, any different kind of disease which is related to lungs. But when they have that, I have this data set, which is an input data set, and then there is a label associated with that input data set for that classifying an individual. Based on this data set, I can very quickly just connect here and then start classifying and building the models straight away, pointing to a BigQuery table, and use that table and then our standard data set, and then build the model around it. Once I have that model built, now any new patient comes in, I can input the same form into this prediction model and then say, oh, give me what the outcome could be. And this would easily tell me what the outcome of that data set is. So here also, I don't need to learn any new algorithms or for regression or classification or anything like that. All I have to do is input the data. Google looks for the relevant model and gives me the best results. So this is the idea, is that it's actually simplifying the entire AI ML machine learning platform for any person to start using it. Next, please. Now, let's say I have the same 100,000 patients. Now I get the scans, I have the reports from radiologists, then I have the prescriptions from the doctors, and then I also have, let's say, reports or the results back from patients saying like what kind of treatment they received and how they felt it and so on. So this is all textual data. And this textual data set, I would like to do the analysis on that textual data set. I would like to analyze the sentiments of those patients and see how they felt about it. And so here in the AutoML text, people can, what we can do is we can actually input the, let's say, radiology reports, prescriptions, and all of that for those 100,000 data sets of the patients we have actually received. And from that data set, then I can extract entities where I can extract, let's say, what medicines were given to those patients, what kind of reports came out from radiologists, and also identify the sentiments. Once I have done that, now I may be able to develop an application where it can take the new scans and the new data and maybe automatically generate the report or the prescription, and maybe identify like what kind of drugs I might want to actually give it to them. And in certain cases, I may not have any results available, and that may be one of the potential target for my testing for new diseases and new drugs. Because when machine learning models are unable to find patterns based on the new data sets coming in, that means either the model is incorrect or there is a possibility that I don't have a specific results for that, and that may be a good target to evaluate for new discoveries. So this makes it, but here again, I would like to emphasize that it's so simple to use that I don't need to learn too much of technology around it to do discoveries. And as Ben mentioned earlier, is that people are a little bit skeptic around using these technologies so far. And one of the reasons I believe is that people do not understand these technologies a lot. And so by making it simple enough, people can get head start very quickly. And by getting a head start, then at some point, you may start questioning, whether these models are giving the accurate results or not giving the accurate results. And at that point, you might need some more advanced technologies to bring in. But to head start, this is a perfect solution to adopt the AI and ML, especially in the drug discovery and human improvements. Next, please. This is another AutoML for videos. So let's say I have ultrasound scans and I would like to identify, how the child is in pregnant mothers. And so this can very quickly help us analyze different type of movements, different type of actions happening in the body. So this is just another set of data set we can analyze here. Next, please. Now we have the data set created, and we have collected all the data sets from scans, surveys, the radiologist report. We have data sets from, let's say, prescriptions, patient sentiment, all of that. Once the data set is into the Google Cloud Storage or into BigQuery, then what we want to do is we want to start training the model. And training the model is as simple as just selecting here like AutoML and continue, and it's going to just ask us like how much resources do we want to use, and it's going to show us the pricing, and that's it. Once I do and start the training, and that's as simple as that. Going through 3 screens, and I can start training my model. And next, please. And once I train the model, now I would like to make sure that accuracy of those models is good enough. This gets a little bit technical, and as long as we understand like what is precision, what is recall, how I can measure the accuracy of the model, and so on. And so that's very little bit of a mathematics here, but once we understand this, I can actually very quickly identify the performance of my model, which is going to be on a newer data sets coming in. And if this one is reasonably well understood, then I can say my models will behave very well. And so, but these metrics are automatically generated and given to us to analyze it. So as long as we understand this, we are good, and we can identify whether the best model selected by Google from AutoML is good enough for me, or do I need some advanced machine learning technologies to look at this. Next slide, please. So once we have identified that results are going to be accurate enough or reasonably accurate enough, all I need to do is create a new endpoint, which is sort of an API endpoint. Once I create an API endpoint, I can very quickly make an API call and get the predictions on the new input data set. And if I want to have results generated for lots of data sets, let's say I have another 10,000 patients data, and I would like to generate the results from that model which I have built using for those 10,000 patients, then all I have to do is do a batch prediction. And so upload those results into Google Cloud Storage and then point it for the batch prediction. Next slide, please. And the batch prediction is as simple as just pointing it to the Google Cloud Storage, and it will produce the results onto Google Cloud Storage back, and then we can look at those results. Next, please. So as we have seen that AutoML can help us expedite our discovery process, either it's in drug discovery or generating the prescriptions or generating a radiology report or various different kind of scenarios. It can very easily expedite our entire process and help us adopt this, because we don't have to learn too much, because learning is it's a dedicated activity, and that requires a lot of time and effort, and we usually are busy what we know in doing that, so it gets a little bit difficult for us now. But once we have used AutoML and we are looking at it, and now we say, oh, the results are looking good, but I'm not 100% satisfied with it. Now I would like to explore more. So then I find some time over the weekends or nights, and I start learning about these machine learning algorithms and would like to apply myself. Now, there are various different ways of doing that. One is the simplest way is, let's say, if I understand a little bit of SQL, I can just use BigQuery ML. So BigQuery is a data warehousing solution where I can store like petabytes of data in a tabular format. But once I store that data in a tabular format, now I would like, which is what I did in case of an example of a survey. And once I have the data set, I can start applying various these different models using standard SQL, which is like create model, whatever the name of the model, and then select the columns as the input and the type of model I would like to generate and the outcome. And similarly, once the model is generated, I can evaluate that model to see the accuracy of the model, and then I can just start applying the predictions on that. So this is executing as simple as that, executing a simple SQL statement. So BigQuery ML can be a great way to start using for building custom models. And this also supports TensorFlow models if I want to do more further advanced analysis on my data sets. Next, please. But what we have actually explained so far is a very simplistic view of machine learning, which can help us expedite the entire process. But as we get more and more knowledge in the area and also more and more data gets collected, I would like to do my own analysis. I would like to build my own algorithms and start doing a lot of different type of processing. So if we want to do those different type of processing, Google AI ML platform also provides various different tool sets. For example, I can use data labeling. If I have data, but they are not labeled properly, then there is a toolkit, which is we call labeling. And their humans and automated tooling can help us label the data appropriately. And if you remember, Ben was mentioning that machine learning is not sort of good until the data is actually properly done. So data labeling is a very important part of machine learning, where we need to have properly labeled and clean data. And so this is one of the services provided by Google itself. And within AI ML platform, then there are many other tools available, like feature store, metadata management, and notebooks for exploration, and so on. So if we want to actually learn more about this, I think today we are probably going to be not having enough time to do that, but we are happy to actually go over this in the next session, where we can actually pick onto specific topics of your interest, and then we can take those topics and go further deep into that. But the idea is that the toolkit provided by Google is so simple that anybody can quickly start on it. Next, please. Now, we just talked about AI and ML platform and a little bit about BigQuery and cloud storage, but the toolkit for the analytics on Google Cloud Platform is very vast. So as you can see in this picture, I will be able to just describe a few items here, but that will give us some idea on what those are, and then how we can leverage them or utilize them. So here you see, in terms of data capture, we have a cloud PubSub, we have IoT core, data transfer service, and storage transfer service. So these data capture tools can very quickly help us launch, let's say, a cloud PubSub topic, and I can actually receive data live feed into PubSub topic, which can go into BigQuery automatically. So I don't need to do anything. I just set up a topic. I set up a connectivity with the topic from an application. I start receiving the events, and then it straight away goes into BigQuery. So, and then I have all my data in BigQuery for the analysis and machine learning processing. Similarly, I can use, let's say I have petabytes of data collected from multiple scans, and I have put it onto cloud storage bucket, but now I need to start processing them and start identifying feature sets. I start identifying labels and so on. So maybe then I can use maybe Cloud Data Flow or Cloud Data Prep, so that they get processed, and then the results of those processing can be stored into BigQuery. Similarly, there is a toolkit called Apache Beam, which is an open source tool, but which is now if I have to deploy that myself, it requires a lot of maintenance, whereas if I use Cloud Dataflow, which is actually a fully hosted and managed solutions from Google, so that allows me to not manage the infrastructure at all. And so all of these toolkits, and then I have toolkits like Cloud Data Fusion, which is a toolkit allowing me to do my ETL transformation. Let's say I want to transform one column into a different column for some of the reasons, then I can use Cloud Data Fusion as an ETL tool to generate and produce data sets into either in BigQuery or Cloud SQL or some other storage. I have Cloud Data Catalog, which is actually allows me to discover data which is available in BigQuery or available in various other data stores. And so it has the metadata for the data itself. And Cloud Composer is really Airflow completely hosted in Google Cloud. So if I need to schedule a lot of different jobs, I can use Cloud Composer, which is a fully managed solution, as I mentioned, and that can be utilized for scheduling different type of jobs for data processing. Next slide, please. So as we discussed that, and I have emphasized several times that AI and ML on GCP is extremely simple. And if I want to do drug discovery on it, for example, at every stage in the drug discovery, for example, target identification and validation, compound screening, preclinical development, clinical development, all of these stages can be very easily tried and tested on GCP platform. All we need is a basic machine learning knowledge and the data. And so that's all I want to say and emphasize that. Shweta.
Yes, thank you. So Vinay, first I want to say thank you so much. DoiT has really been an instrumental partner for Google Cloud to simplify adopting AI and ML pipelines for drug discovery. And I think, Vinay, what Ben shared about his experience is the greatest compliment to DoiT's value add. So to wrap up for today, I want to thank Ben from Recursion, Vinay from DoiT, and the audience for spending their time with us today. I really found it very interesting, right? As Ben had shared, around the COVID-19 vaccine development timeline, it was unprecedented, in particular because of the mRNA vaccine. There were naysayers about mRNA technology, and now the majority of the people have these vaccines administered to them. So I'm the same skepticism that we're seeing about AI and ML that Ben was alluding to. I think that in a few years, we will have proven the effectiveness of it with many organizations. So I look forward to coming back to Recursion, even shorter than 10 years, and see that Ben's prediction about industrialization is going to be proven true. Yeah. And I'm very, very proud of seeing, how Google Cloud has supported with some of these tools for Recursions, shortening of drug discovery timelines and some of those accurate predictions of finding more of those compounds for target drugs. I do want to wrap up. Go ahead, Vinay.
Yeah, what I was going to say is the vision of the industrializing the AI ML platform for drug discovery from Ben. I mean, the AutoML actually brings in that much sooner than actually the later.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's going to be much sooner than 10 years. Exactly to your point. So I'm getting a lot of questions today about how other organizations can engage. I think we've created a lot of excitement. So Google Cloud, right? We have a complete ecosystem of solutions to help customers with the adoption of AI and ML in your own efforts. And remember, I do want to emphasize, right, that data can reside anywhere and you can still engage with Google Cloud. And we have fantastic ecosystem of partners like DoiT, who can guide customers, who can guide our partners and help them adopt the right solutions to enable your business challenges and to enable your the solutions that you're looking for. So for those who are reaching out to me to following today's session, I would say reach out to your Google Cloud representative. We will personally schedule a workshop to dig deeper on your particular requirements. And please look out for a follow-up email and feel free to provide feedback on today's session or any other questions that you might have following this session. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for joining today and end our session. Thank you.